Look, as Rachel said in the introduction, I've had about 20 plus years experience in the innovation space, both as a consultant and as a senior innovation manager in a number of corporations. And I've learned a little bit over that time. I've also been a bit of a, what do they call us? Pracademics. So academics who are practical. So I taught in the Swinburne Masters of Entrepreneurship and Innovation for 10 years actually as a sessional lecturer, as well as in the executive education arm at RMIT University, working with Chinese and Vietnamese delegations, which has been a lot of fun. So I want to start by where it all began for me. Now, who's heard of Gary Hamel? Gary, no? Oh dear, makes me feel old. All right, so Gary is out of Harvard and the London Business School, and he was sort of one of the preeminent authors back in the 90s around competitive advantage, strategy, but also innovation, and he really hung his hat on this innovation agenda. I got the privilege of studying under Gary in 2001 in his Innovation Academy in San Francisco, and went back, he came to Melbourne end of year before last, end of 2014, and reacquainted with him and his teachings. One of the things one of the papers he produced was called Bringing Silicon Valley Inside. And this was the notion that you could replicate Silicon Valley inside your organisation. And there was a problem with that. And the problem was that if you didn't have a Silicon Valley culture, it kind of wasn't going to work, right? And let's face it, at the time I was with ICI Orica, 70-plus-year-old chemical engineering company, right? Do you reckon that had a Silicon Valley culture? No. So while some of the philosophies were good, it didn't quite make it for me. However, last year I got a gig for 6 months with Cisco in their Services Innovation Excellence Centre. And I was just conscious I might knock that. And it was really cool. So I sort of worked between Melbourne and San Jose. And I got this opportunity to sit in Silicon Valley, right? And I was a real student of it. I was observing what was going on. And the penny dropped. So it took almost 20 years for this penny to drop. And it's what Silicon Valley does. How does it create this hotbed of innovation, right? So that it becomes, an attractor of the best talents, the best ideas, the best knowledge in the world, and let's face it, capital. And it does. It takes those four aspects and it connects the four of them. Heaps of good ideas. Look, we could, run a 10-minute workshop and come up with 100 ideas. No shortage of ideas in this world. But it's how you bring them to bear, how you actually make them, how you implement them and bring them to life that matters. So no shortage of ideas. But when you go there, you realise there's Stanford University and you've got the D School, so design thinking, and there's all this terrific knowledge that's being poured into that environment, into that ecosystem. They do really cool stuff like Cisco actually brings in on secondment university professors, and let's face it, their students is what they're looking for. So they get access to the best and brightest that's going around at Stanford and San Jose State University. And they're able to integrate those people within their business for a period of 3 to 6 months and really tap their knowledge, but also then look at some of the applications of that knowledge. So there's this terrific little knowledge ecosystem that happens. Talent, let's face it, if you're in the IT industry or you've got an idea for an app or a startup, where do you want to be? You want to be in Silicon Valley, right? So it attracts these talented people. It's like a magnet. And then, of course, capital comes along, and there were some really interesting lessons about capital. One of the criticisms that there's been in Australia is that we don't have a venture capital community. Now, I don't want to have that argument whether we do or we don't, or whether how healthy it is. One of my, sorry?
We don't.
No, I know. Yeah, no argument from me. And there's a reason for that. Right, so I use this analogy of fishing, and I'm not much of a fisherman, but if you want to catch a big fish, you look for the little fish because they're feeding off of the big fish are feeding off the little ones, right? So one of the things that we don't have here in this country is early stage funding. They got a heap of it in Silicon Valley, right? There's a lot of angel investors. Cisco themselves have put $2 billion into early stage investment. They'll put 10 grand here, 100 grand there, whatever. And I think they've made something like 2,000 investments in early stage startups. So then that way you get an idea to a point where it's investable. You want to see a revenue stream, you want to see real customers, right? Get it to the stage where it's investable, then the venture capitalists will start to have a look at it. So, what the heck has this got to do with duck herding? Well, we did this at City Power Core. When I was the innovation manager there, we actually created an environment where we were connecting ideas, talented people, knowledge and capital. We had arrangements with Swinburne University and RMIT. Funny how that came about. We had a lot of good people, a lot of good ideas. My role was kind of in the middle here, where I would then connect that to, I knew Brian at Ballarat and some guy in Shepparton should really get together and make magic happen. Go to the finance department, get some early stage funding, whether it's $5,000, $10,000, didn't matter. Let's do prototyping and get some stuff off the ground. So, how did duck herding come about? Mark Sturgis, who was the general manager of Network Services at the time, said to me, look, Jason, can you come and talk to my management team? Inspire them and give them some way of thinking about how they as leaders can help to really push and drive the innovation agenda. He said, but I don't want any of this academic bullshit, right? Because he knew I taught at Swinburne. And I said, look, give me a moment to think about it. I'll come up with something innovative. And I did. And I said, duck herding. And he said, not that bloody creative. So duck herding is an analogy. I've spent a lot of time in Asia. So what is that picture of this duck herder in Vietnam, as it turns out? What does that picture say to you about leadership?
The team are leading the way.
The team are leading the way. Yeah, it's a good pick. And in fact, there's something that stands out in this image that for the first 25 times I looked at it, it didn't really stand out, but seeing it on a big screen one time, it really stood out for me. And that's these two guys here, these two little guys. You can't really see the expression on their face from where you're standing, right? But they are, right? They are leading the charge. To market, to be slaughtered, of course. But they really are. They're going to market. There's a market just sort of down here. But these two guys think they're the leaders, right? So the duck herder at the back, right, he's got the coloured flags and he's sort of encouraging and he's guiding and he's, sort of helping them to believe that they are leading the way. They loved this. They thought that this was really cool because they thought, you see all these analogies of the leaders out the front, right, and leading, sorry?
Does the thing get slaughtered?
You get slaughtered, maybe. Yeah, that's all right. Bring in another one. All right, so the leader's out the front leading the charge. It's not. If you, to really make innovation happen, that people have got to do it themselves. They've got to build the capability, the understanding, right? And it's a peer-to-peer exercise. So we built a team of 50 innovation champions at City Power Core, right through every depot, through every office, and they led the way. Yep, me as the duck herder, right, was coaching, guiding them, and very simple things like how to have an innovation conversation. I gave an hour talk this morning on conversations for collaboration, but how to have an innovation conversation. And I will give you a for instance of this. Someone brings an idea to you as a manager. You've got a choice right there of how you respond to that person. And how you respond will govern how they then feel. So, idea comes to you and you can say, hey, how'd you come up with that idea? So how's that person feeling at that point in time? Validated, right? Okay, so they tell you how they come up with it. And you say, wow, how long have we had that problem? And so you start to interrogate the problem, right? What's the impact of that problem? How long has that been happening? Wow, how widespread is that? And then you'll say something like, well, what other ways did you think of solving that problem? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get deeper into what's their thought process and is this idea really the best way of solving that problem now that we understand it? And the analogy that I used in talking to these guys about understanding the problem is the space pen analogy. So who's heard of that, the space pen? Right. Who hasn't? Few? Okay, so it's an urban myth, but it's a great story. Right? So the space pen. in the 1960s during the space race, NASA realised that pens won't write in space, right? Because they need gravity to get ink to the ball. So they spent about $3 million, thixotropic gels because it would have spurted everywhere, nitrogen pressure cylinders and titanium balls and the whole 9 yards. The Russians used a pencil, right? So your definition of the problem actually is important because it opens up different solution pathways. If you define your problems too narrowly about, I need a pen that writes in space, because that's how a lot of ideas used to come to us. We need to do X. It's coming as a solution. It's not coming as the problem. So you have to get to where the problem lies. But while you're having that conversation, what's happening? That person's feeling engaged. So, second take at this. Oh, how'd you come up with that idea? Same words. How's that person feeling now? All right? That person's feeling, oh, they don't care, they're not interested. All right? So what are your chances of that person bringing another idea, telling their friends about their experience, their friends in the herd of their experience of bringing an idea into your organisation? What's that going to do to your innovation ecosystem? Versus the first round, what's that going to do to your innovation ecosystem? So I want to leave you with this thought. How am I going? Oh, that's unusual for me because I can talk. Okay, I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. As a leader, as a duck herder, right, you've got to think about a couple of factors. What are the enabling behaviours that as a leader I need to exhibit for innovation? Now, I did this late last year with the top 130 leaders in Sportsbet, which was a whole heap of fun because they have quite a culture, quite irreverent. But taking them and asking them these questions, right? What are the enabling behaviours? What are the disabling behaviours of leadership for innovation? And then turning the reflection on them. Which one of those are you doing? What are you got to stop doing? What are you got to start doing? What are you got to do more of, right, in terms of these leadership behaviours? Because at the end of the day, the message I want to leave you with is that innovation is a discretionary behaviour. People have a choice. I don't know, right, Josh, what idea you've got in your head, right? No. That's okay, you can tell me afterwards. All right. As long as you buy me a red. People have a choice of whether they bring that in or not. So if you can create an environment where they feel that they're validated, great word, they feel that they're being listened to, and they feel that something's going to happen, they will bring it in. If they feel that you're not listening and there's no point, it's not going to go anywhere, they're not. So you as a leader can make that happen through the enabling behaviours of innovation. So don't be a sitting duck, be a duck herder. Thanks. All right. Look, I'm happy to answer any questions. Shoot.
The question here is not about the leader, but about the peer workers. I've been in business for the last few months. Trouble is not taking initiative. Trouble is convincing others that what I'm saying is right. Believe me. So.
Yeah, right, okay. So there's a couple of aspects to that, right? And this is a whole other lecture, but I'll give you the short version of it, right? That leadership is an act, it's not a position. So I don't care where you sit in an organisation hierarchy, you can be a leader. I have seen graduates fresh out of uni, right, lead like there's no tomorrow, right? The picture's gone, but they're the lead ducks. They're out there forging the charge, right? It's about the nature of the... That's okay. That's them now. It's about how you have those conversations, right? So how can you... The people who are unconvinced, and let's face it, there's a lot of ideas around. So it is a sell job. You've got to convince someone that this is, A, there's a problem, right? B, there's a high impact of said problem, and C, that your idea is the best way of solving said problem. So it's a bit of a sell job that you've got to do, right? So learning how to sell your idea, and we call this pitching an idea, it's like Shark Tank, right? Learning how to do that is actually one of the capabilities. We ran workshops in City Power Core and in Cisco teaching engineers how to pitch an idea.
I'm an engineer.
Right. I've got it. I can give it to you if you like. Yeah, because engineers tend to, and it's just not being stereotyped, it's just experience. They tend to look at the technical side of it. So I'll see a proposition that will be 15 slides on the technology and one slide as a by the way on the financials or something, right? That's you? All right. You've got to turn that around, my friend, right? It's about a business case. It's about what's the value proposition and how do you then deliver on that value proposition. So, but we can do that over a glass of wine as well, if you like. All right, you're welcome. Thanks.
What's your thoughts on the high school education system at the moment, right? Because I found it was quite discouraged to be running your own business and trying to start something of your own in high school, and they sort of encourage you to be in university and follow your job, engineering or accounting.
That is a hot button of mine. Okay, so we're starting to learn at university level that there are alternative pathways for people and they're incredibly valid. So I was on the founding program advisory board for the Bachelor of Business Entrepreneurship at RMIT, and it's a cool program, right? I think the first university in Australia to have an entrepreneur in residence. So his job is literally just to help students get their businesses off the ground, right? Don't want to be an advert for RMIT, but it's a cool course. That's yet to filter down widespread to secondary level, right? And I think it has a lot to do with any teachers in the room? You're not going to say so anyway, are you? Has a lot to do with the teaching fraternity because they are in the rich dad, poor dad kind of mindset. You know, get an education, get a job, you know, work for the man, save money, buy a house, you know, blah, 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 versus actually having been out there and started an enterprise. Clearly I'm of a different school of thought, right? I think enterprise is the engine room of an economy, and it is more than a valid pathway for someone to even be thinking about in primary school, let alone secondary. I'm hoping that this new innovation agenda that the federal government have released will go some way into overcoming some of that. We're going to be teaching kids coding. We're going to be teaching kids entrepreneurship. We're going to be teaching kids how to run a business. So hopefully that starts to happen in the next couple of years.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just extending on Josh's question. I think the same thing plays out at a state and a federal level, where the status quo almost seems to be preferable to change.
Yes.
What do you think we can do as individuals to push up to the government sector to actually try and intentionally tip playing fields to foster new ideas, industries? Absolutely.
You've got to get together. So there's an old saying, I think it was by Henri Bergson, that says the mightiest of rivers will lose their force when broken into many streams. So this is about getting, and I use the word tribe quite deliberately, a tribe of people together who are of like minds, who want to see kids learning entrepreneurship in high school, who want to drive enterprise as a valid way of creating economic prosperity and, let's face it, social prosperity in the state as well. You look at places like the Hub and the Engine Room, etc. There's some way to doing that, right? But this is about, start something, right? Get a bunch of folks together, come up with a plan. There's a whole bunch of people here in South Australia who are entrepreneurs and want to be entrepreneurs, and they're all sort of dotted around the place at the moment. It's about getting all of that together. And, Frank Seeley, we were talking to Frank Seeley before Christmas, and, God love him, he just basically said, I'm not waiting for the government, I'm just going to get out there and do it. I'm just going to get a bunch of people together. And so they had the Impact Awards prior to Christmas. The government got wind of it and said, oh, please, can we sponsor it? And they said, no, go away. This is we're doing this. This is something that's got to be spawned out of enterprise, which was just music to my ears. Oh, that was awesome. So it is. It's get a bunch of folks together, talk about something, get a plan, make it happen.
Yeah, there's been many events and entrepreneur weeks and all of that, and it kind of stops once the week's over.
Yeah, it's just talk fest.
Yeah.
I mean, I presented at two of them. So, So it is. It's, yep.
Can I ask,
Aaron.
Jason, so you're saying this is the same government that wound down or wound up Innovate SA? We're screaming to support an innovation contest.
Oh, what, the South Australian government? Yeah, an innovation contest. No, as I said, this is about us getting together and doing something about it. If we, what did Frank call it? Industrial welfare, which I thought was a really good term. Don't wait for governments to spawn things or do handouts or anything like that. You know, get a bunch of folks together. You know, what they do in Silicon Valley, they fund it themselves. They get someone who's a successful entrepreneur and they'll tip in some coin, right? They don't need, you don't see the, you know, the Californian government or the American government tipping money into initiatives in Silicon Valley. It's self-sustaining, right? And it's about the entrepreneurs who are here, like the Frank Sealeys, who are starting to lead that charge, actually tipping some money into that to make it happen well beyond government. And I reckon we went to school together.
Oh.
I'm serious. You look very familiar. We'll have a conversation. Yeah. Maybe we did. I reckon we did. Anyway, that's such an Adelaide thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for your questions. Thanks for listening. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the hospitality. Thank you. Cheers.